Sometimes love isn't enough. As an adoptive mom, people would often say this to me, as if to imply I couldn't love my son enough to change behaviors or heal his trauma, so I should probably just give up. At least that's how I took those four powerful words, which had buried themselves deeply in my mind, leading me to doubt my ability to parent my child. Sometimes love isn't enough. That is the truth. Oftentimes, you need love and powerful, personalized tools to raise a child who's experienced trauma and disrupted attachment, or a child who you're struggling to connect with. I am on a mission to help parents raising kids with a tricky past to show up with unconditional love and practical tools to lovingly manage even the most challenging of times. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Plus, if you like what you hear, I'd love for you to leave a review. Now let's get to the good stuff. Welcome back to Sometimes Love Isn't Enough, the podcast that is all about you, the parent who is raising a child with challenging behaviors, a child who you're struggling to connect with. I am your host. I am Angie Grandt. I am the adoption coach, and I am just so excited to share with you some really key strategies that you can start using to shift the way that you're showing up for your kiddo, the kiddo that you are struggling with the most, the kiddo who makes you want to pull out your hair because you you can't seem to figure out why it's so hard. Why is it so hard with this one kid when you feel so competent in so many other areas of life? That's the one that I'm here to help you with. So I'm kind of giggling because the name of this podcast episode just makes me giggle. But so each month I have been doing these face-to-face in-person workshops at a lovely salt cave near where I live and work. I chose the salt cave because it is the most relaxing place that I know of. And I know that as an adoptive or foster parent who's in the thick of it, relaxation is not on the to-do list oftentimes. And so as I had been hanging out at the Salt Cave and just feeling the relaxation, I thought, oh man, this is where I need to do my workshops to help other parents who are struggling with behavior, struggling to know how to shift things. So the workshops have been lovely. Parents have been learning some really great tools and hopefully have been relaxing a little bit as they're there. But so in a recent workshop there, one of the things that we talked about, I wanted to share here. And so here's the concept. It's about fixing your face. And I mean that in the most loving and compassionate way. But here's the scoop. When we're raising kids who have experienced early complex trauma, which if you're a foster adoptive parent, then chances are that's your kiddo. When we're raising kiddos who have experienced early complex trauma, they most often are biologically wired to be hypervigilant. They are wired to um, have this instinctive knowing about what is going on around them because they need to, right? When you think about it, a child who has experienced early trauma, their fight, flight, and fear responses are in hyperactive mode. They're going all the time, even after the threat of any kind of danger is long, long gone, which is oftentimes, where we see our kids, right? My son has been in my family now for 13 years, and it took a long, long time for him to be in a space where he was calm enough that he wasn't in that fight, flight, or freeze all the time. But so science tells us that this is a reality. When kids experience trauma early on, there are structural changes to their brain. There are certain parts of their brain, the parts that are designed to protect us, that are larger in children who've experienced trauma than in those who have not. And as a result, there oftentimes is less activity, less blood flow to the parts of the brain that help our kids to control their impulses and to problem solve and to their higher executive functions, right? So these are things that we know about our kids, but then in reality, in the day to day with our kids, what that ends up looking like is kids who, and young adults and teens who oftentimes are much more aware of what is happening around them than maybe the average bear. I remember a couple of years ago, I was giving a training for some EMS or a paramedic training group, and for police officers, local first responders. And oftentimes in the training, I would say that if an individual with autism walks into a room, their brain is much more likely to pick up on the details of what's happening in the room. So, for example, they might pick up on certain colors that a particular person has on their shirt, or they might pick up on what type of beverage is in the back of the room. They would pick up on the details of the room, where somebody who has experienced trauma is much more likely to not only notice quickly the vibe and the feeling of the room, but also will have a quick sense of who is where and what they are doing. So, somebody who's experienced trauma is much more likely to pick up on all of the people in the room and what they're doing and be able to remember that information and recall it. And so, how that looks though with our kids is that I definitely experienced this in my home, and I hear it time after time after time from other parents who are raising kids who've had a tricky past, is that our kids can oftentimes be hyper aware of our energy, what we're feeling, and oftentimes before we know. And so, what this can look like is a child who quickly says, "Why are you mad?" When I would say, "I'm not mad. Why would you say that?" And my son would say, "But mom, you're mad. I know that you're mad." And here, I thought I was doing such a great job of faking it. I might have felt irritated inside, but I had myself convinced that I had put my game face on before I picked him up at school. Same situation where there are kids who have experienced early trauma pick up on parents and other people's emotions long before that individual person knows. And so when we're thinking about how we're showing up for our kids, how we're trying to respond to them with unconditional love, one of the first tips that I have for parents when I'm working with them is to fix your face, because our kids know and sense and pick up on the subtle little differences. They sense if we're feeling irritated, but we're trying to be calm. They also sense when we're trying to fake it. And so when I say fix your face, I don't just mean put a smile on and fake it. What I actually mean is do the work to shift how you're feeling so that your face reflects it. I often have parents say, "Well, how in the world am I supposed to do that? My child is screaming profanities at me, or they've punched a hole in the wall, or they've just destroyed all of their siblings' Lego creations, or whatever it might be. How in the world am I supposed to fix my face and have emotions that match the feeling that my child needs from me?" Well, I have a couple of tools that I share with my clients, and I'm going to share a couple of them here. But the first one is if you go back to one of our more recent episodes, it was all about creating a vision for your family. So sometimes while we're working on behaviors in our home, sometimes the best thing that you can do is shift who you're being. And you can do that by focusing on your vision. So, what does this really look like in your living room with your child who's screaming profanities at me, at you, at me? Maybe they're screaming them at me. I don't know. But what this looks like is your child is engaging in whatever their behavior might be, and you're listening to them and you're being present for them, but you're also thinking about it will be so amazing when I've reached my vision. And so I'm dedicated to working towards happiness in this moment so that we can get to our goal. So let me say that again. It's about being in the moment and being present for your child, and then being able to say to yourself, I am so dedicated and committed to working towards my vision that I am willing to practice being who I need to be right now for my child. It is not about removing yourself from the moment and not being present for your child because they need you to be there. But it's about seeing that moment as something that you're working through together with your child that is just as hard for them, but that you have the power to see it as something that you can learn from and grow from and work towards your bigger vision. Now, it's not easy to do, but this is where we start. And oftentimes, and also at the workshop that I did recently, we talked about going through this practice of imagining your vision while you're looking in the mirror. So, in the vision creation episode, I talked all about imagining what life could be like and really stretching your imagination. Well, now I'm suggesting that you do that same, you feel the feelings that come up with it, and then you look at yourself in the mirror. Even if that's not your favorite thing to do, just trust me that it is an important part of the process because we want your thoughts, your imagination to stir up feelings in you that are emitted from your body, right? Because if you go into that living room and your child is screaming profanities and you make that face that lets them know that you're disappointed or you're frustrated or you're at the end of your rope or you're about ready to, call the other parent or call the police or whatever it might be, if that's what's coming out of your face, well, chances are behaviors are going to continue. And I'm guessing that that's not what you want for your family, not what your child wants. So humor me. Try this exercise of imagining your vision that you've created for your family, feeling the feelings that come up with it, and looking at your face and what it looks like. What the feedback that I got when I did this workshop a couple of weeks ago was that a parent said this word, and I've heard it now from clients, and I felt it myself. A parent said in this workshop that I work on being stoic for my child. This parent said, I can't show them I'm frustrated because they'll blow up. I can't show them that I can't smile because that creates a meltdown. They said, so I have been trained by my child that I just need to be stoic. So I challenged the parent and said, but what if your child doesn't need you to be mad or happy or stoic? What if your child just needs you to be there with love and compassion for whatever they're going through? What if you could emit that feeling through your face for your child so that they know and feel safe in their feelings that they're having, which are probably terrifying to them? And I know oftentimes that when our kids are acting out, especially as they move into the teen years and beyond, when our kids are acting out, oftentimes it doesn't look like they're scared, but there's a really good chance that they are. And so if we at the very least can fix our face, change the feelings that we're bringing into those situations when our kids are acting at their worst, and show them with our face that we love them no matter how they're behaving, just imagine what might change for them. Imagine what'll change for you. So I can't wait to hear how you have put this practice into play in your home with your family. I can't wait to hear your feedback, and I would love, love, love a review and a share so that I can help as many families as possible to start shifting things at home because it doesn't have to be so hard. It really doesn't. So, that's all for this episode. Thank you so very much for hanging out. I hope that you found this helpful. Take care. I hope that you found this episode so incredibly powerful. Thank you for joining us for Sometimes Love Isn't Enough. If you resonated with what you heard here, please subscribe to this podcast and give us a review. You can also follow us on all the socials. Check the show notes for all the details about how to start tackling behaviors and creating a powerful, loving relationship with your child, a child who needs your love the most. And if your gut's telling you that it's time for a change now, book a free consult. I'd love to help you love unconditionally and show you that you have that power within you.